Hi, I'm Father Joseph Mary, and welcome back to A Simple Word. In this Sunday's Gospel, Luke reminds us once again that Jesus is traveling. Right? He's on his final journey, and the cross is waiting for him. Luke says that great crowds were traveling with Jesus. Now, what's caused such large number of people to flock suddenly to his banner? That's the key to understanding the story. Among the many people following Jesus are his 12 apostles, as well as the many men and women, his disciples, that have given up home, family, and livelihoods for the sake of the kingdom. But Luke tells us that the number of those following Jesus has swelled to great crowds. Most of these are hangers-on, the half-committed, those intrigued by the reputation of Jesus, by the miracles he's performed. Right? They know where he's going. The great crowds that are with him think that he's on his way to a stunning victory and to establishing a new empire. These great crowds are with him because they want to see if it's really going to happen. Is this Jesus really who he says he is? They're not committed disciples so much as inspired onlookers. They're there to see the show. And how do we know this? We know this because of what Jesus says to them next. Luke says that on this journey, Jesus turns suddenly toward the crowd, and he says to them, "If anyone comes to me without hating his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." These are hard words. Right? There's a challenge meant to shock them out of their complacency. We can't necessarily take these words with literalistic precision. Remember that hyperbole was a key tool used by Jewish rabbis to teach and to instruct. And the word translated as hate is an English translation of a Greek translation of an ancient Hebrew spoken by Jesus. We can understand the word better in its Semitic sense of prefer. Nonetheless, the words were truly shocking to his audience, even as they are to us. But if the crowds were shocked by this, they were appalled and even horrified by what he says next. "Whoever does not carry his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." Whoever does not carry his own cross cannot be my disciple. As challenging as these words might sound to us, to the Jews in Palestine, these words touched a psychological wound of their deepest nightmare. The sight of Jewish men hanging on crosses, silhouetted against the sun, writhing in unimaginable agony, was an all too familiar sight in Palestine. So when Jesus says, "carry a cross," they know exactly what he's talking about, and it's appalling. Why is Jesus speaking so strongly? Because he knows the hearts of those in the crowd, and he's trying to wake them up. He's saying, do you really want to be my disciple? Because it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you relationships. It's going to cost you to make difficult changes in your life. It's going to cost you suffering at times. Do you really want this? Think about it carefully. Think about it as carefully as any man building a vineyard tower or a king planning a battle. Dietrich was a German Protestant living under the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler. And he was appalled that so many Christians, so many who claimed to be faithful disciples of Jesus, could stand by idly and silently as Jewish families were slaughtered in the concentration camps. Bonhoeffer himself was later arrested and hanged for his vocal opposition to Hitler. In his book, The Cost of Discipleship, Bonhoeffer distinguished between what he called cheap grace and costly grace. He wrote, "Cheap grace is the preaching of forgiveness without requiring repentance, baptism without church discipline, communion without confession. Cheap grace is grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus Christ living and incarnate." But he said there's also costly grace. Such grace is costly because it calls us to follow. And it's a grace because it calls us to follow Jesus Christ. It's costly because it costs a man his life. And it's a grace because it gives a man the only true life. It's costly because it condemns sin, and grace because it justifies the sinner. And above all, it's costly because it cost God the life of his Son. Thanks for watching this episode of A Simple Word, and we'll see you next week. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe.